Namaste.
And welcome.
Welcome to our weekly online Satsang, which is simply a Sanskrit word that means community of truth, but a simpler way to put it is probably just spiritual community. However, two or more people who are on the spiritual path come together to share their truth, their experiences, you got a Satsang. It's a really important ingredient in our spiritual journey to join together with other people who are going through the same experiences of awakening and the flowering of the heart. And that's why you're here. And we're glad you're with us. We have people who join us from all over the world, from every continent, from every belief system, every unbelief system. Everybody's welcome. So one of the things that we're sharing throughout the webcast tonight is something that we call the Flowering Heart Blessing. And actually, you're soaking in it right now. It's a transmission of divine energy and consciousness that catalyzes awakening and the flowering of the heart. And by that we mean discovering that what you're looking for isn't out there somewhere, that a guru or a teacher or a spiritual practice could give it to you. You've already got it. At the very center of your being, in the very center of your spiritual heart, is a spark of divinity, of the divine source. And it contains everything you need for the journey, except, of course, connecting with other people and sharing. That's an essential thing. Even though each one of us has everything we need on the inside, it's when we connect with one another and we share it that it's catalyzed and multiplied and strengthened. So that's really essential. And so the Flowering Heart Blessing is this transmission of grace, unconditional love, of presence, that when the Divine showed it to me and Suzanne said, make sure you tell people that this comes directly from Source. It doesn't come through any religion or a religious organization or master or avatar or saint or hierarchy of any kind. It's a gift directly from the Source for those who wish for grace to help with the journey of awakening. So tell them it's from me and it's not hooked to any belief system, and tell them it's free because it's grace, and grace means something that's freely given without working for it or deserving it or jumping through hoops or going through trials to come to the point where you're worthy to. Grace is just because it is the nature of the Divine to love unconditionally, that the Divine gives assistance, especially at this time on earth when there's so many challenges, when there's so much division. In order for us to come through this, we need to be in a higher state of consciousness than we were when we created all these problems. That's a rough paraphrase of Einstein saying you can't fix a problem when you're in the same mindset that you created it. That consciousness needs to expand, and we need to come to a higher level of coherence and insight and connection so that we can stop investing in a global civilization rooted in competition, conflict, and violence. And we can begin truly to collectively give birth to a new global civilization rooted in cooperation, harmony, and peace. That happens when the collective consciousness shifts. That happens when enough of us individuals begin to awaken to that enlightened consciousness and divinity that resides within us. As I started to say, it's not something you're going to find out there someday or that someone's eventually going to give to you. It's already in us. When we go deep enough inside and we discover our original true self, our essential nature, we discover it is already completely in oneness with all that is, that it's already awakened, that it's already divine. Then I think the real heart of the journey is actually unfolding. Because the minute we make that connection with Source within, it begins to blossom like a flower, which is, I think, why the lotus flower is used so much to describe that flowering process in a lot of Eastern paths, especially within Mahayana Buddhism. But when the heart begins to flower, that light that's been there all the time begins to break out and radiate out through all the layers of our being, illuminating our spiritual nature, then flooding the soul realm, which is where all the thoughts and the emotions and the charges and the programming and the stuff that basically makes us miserable resides. and that light begins to clear all of that. I mean, when light hits a shadow disappears, and the mind is just full of all these shadows and all these conflicts that when the divine light begins to hit it, start to dissolve. And the mind and the emotional level of our being are restructured by our inner divinity. And then the outer layers of our being, our physical bodies, are actually transformed by divine grace. It's amazing how far that's gone in the lives of some of the great saints and yogis. The physical body can be amazingly transformed, but before that ever happens, right from the minute you connect with the divine presence, that light's already shining through all the layers of your being and can bring tremendous healing to your physical body. And then furthermore, shine out into your relationships, heal relationships, all of your connections with the world, and ripple out into infinity. Now, on its way rippling out into infinity, it is flowing through the collective consciousness of humanity. So the more of us that engage this process, which is really all the work of the divine by grace, the more we engage in that process, the more we're contributing to that shift in the collective consciousness I was talking about. And we're moving there. It's we've had some couple of very difficult years for a lot of people on this planet. And I guess that's why, if you're wondering, I'm wearing this flower tonight. It's to remember that this is fun. And life is really a gift to celebrate and enjoy. And one of the things the mind wants us to do before we're free of its control is to make us too serious about everything. But that's what we're about, is igniting that unfolding in the hearts of as many people as we can as quickly as possible. And I have a question someone sent when we get to it that dovetails right into this flower, I think. Shall I just go for it?
Yeah. But please join us in sharing the Flowering Heart Blessing through the whole webcast. And if you're not joining with us tonight, you're joining later, the energy will still be imbibed in the webcast.
Because the thing about spirit is, it is unbounded by time and space. So someone that, watches a really spiritually graced video 10 years later will still feel that energy, which is why we read things like some of the script, like the Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, the Bible. When you read some of the insights of these great mystics, you feel it go through your whole being, and it can actually unlock doors inside. Which is a great thing. If you missed Sunday,
that's what I was going to say.
our Interfaith Commune, which is just that, it's interfaith. It's communion with the cosmic Christ, but it's for everybody. Atheists, theists, deists, agnostics, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, everybody's welcome.
Everybody.
It doesn't matter, but it's an opportunity to experience a tremendous presence, and Sunday was no exception.
It brought me to tears. It was really, really good.
It was entitled, "The True Meaning of Christmas is Heaven on Earth." Now, admittedly, when a lot of us look around, we're maybe seeing,
say, what?
what the heck are you talking about? But when Christ came out of the desert after his 40-day fast, it's been completely mistranslated. Repent and believe the teaching of the church, because judgment's... But actually what he said, if you look at it directly in the Greek, is if you wake up, you'll see the kingdom of heaven is here, right now. And then he just, everywhere he turned, he was proving it and demonstrating it. So anyway, that's archived right here. If you're on Facebook Live or Vimeo, you could watch it at any time. And that one was really inspirational to me when I got that insight. And it was, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So that would be a good thing if you've got a little time. But somebody sent a question, and this somebody is a member of our community that sends really challenging questions, really serious stuff, a lot. This one, I think, really hits the point of why I'm wearing this flower. And he writes, is it possible that for some, one's relationship to the world, the divine, spirituality, etc., might look quite different than what most people consider spiritual, and not include any ritual, process, worship, teaching, learning, etc., that most religions or spiritual groups have, but rather simply be a celebration of life by living it to the fullest, embracing the best it has to offer, choosing only experiences and things that are of good quality, that are made with love and care and thought. Question mark? Mark? Yeah, right on the mark, actually. I think the point, and not everyone's called to spiritual practices and rituals and processes, but we're all being invited to awaken to the amazing gift and miracle of life, and to the awareness of here and now in the present moment. And so all of those spiritual practices, if they work, whether we're talking about Zen meditation or chakra meditation or yoga or thing I love, Qigong and Taoist meditation, but all of those spiritual practices are to lead us to a place where we are free, like children in the present moment. I mean, Christ also said, unless you're converted and become like little children, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. Even though it's right here in front of you, you're going to have to become like a little child to really step into it. So once awakening takes place, and all of those divisive, conflicted efforts of the mind drop away, and we experience the real flowering of awakened consciousness, it is simply a celebration of life, living it to the fullest, embracing all that it has to offer. And sometimes we can miss the whole point of the journey.
Right.
Is to be free. And as these things work, you can let them go. We're not supposed to be enslaved to rituals and practices like constantly for the rest of our life. They're vehicles. And in Tibetan Buddhism even, there's one of the whole schools, the Vajrayana, is like the diamond vehicle. That's what it means. And it's a vehicle, that the whole teaching and the whole practice is a vehicle to take you to a place of real freedom and joy.
Yeah. I really don't do any spiritual practices except for practice being as present and aware as I can in the present moment. So that could be anywhere you go. No matter where you go, there you are, and situations are going to arise. And the more that we can just be heart-centered and present in each moment, the more we experience, because we're not caught up in our minds and thinking about what we're going to do next, what we did last hour. You know, we're not in the past or the future. We're just living in the present moment, and that itself becomes a spiritual practice, which means becoming more fully human.
Sometimes it's like there's nowhere to go and nothing to do, except remember, be here now.
Right.
I mean, this is it.
We spend so much time thinking about other things than just what's happening right in front of us.
And yes, so that was a good lead-in question. Mm-hmm. This is a time for questions and answers, so if you've got some, please share them. When we share in satsang questions and ask for clarification of certain ideas we've been pondering, like our friend that said maybe the point of it for some people isn't spiritual practices and rituals and all of that. Maybe it's to embrace life and just live it fully and freely. Yeah. And some people actually don't ever go through the kinds of like 50 years of spiritual practices I've been doing. I mean, I've been meditating avidly and practicing certain internal yogas for 50 years. And I love it. But a dear friend of mine who's also a Taoist teacher in the same lineage that I am, a dear friend and teacher of his is a Korean Zen master. I think he's Korean, pretty sure. But he never went to a Zen meditation hall. He never went to a lecture. He never read a book. He just woke up one morning and ego dropped away and the separate self dropped away and he just blossomed into enlightenment. And he's a recognized enlightened master. And it's like, that's just not fair. You know, it just, he woke up and it just.
I think too, sometimes a lot of spiritual seeking can be a hindrance because we're actually trying to make our own grace. We're trying to make it happen. And the part of us that doesn't get to go along with it is what's the ego and the mind is what is hindering us from actually being more present in the present moment. We're like, oh, if I just do this yoga right, if I just do this meditation right, if I do more of it, if more is good, let's do better. Let's do a month retreat, you know?
So I think Buddhism's, it's funny, and I don't mean to be in any way insulting to my brother Buddhists and sister Buddhists, because I've been initiated in various Buddhist traditions too, but Buddha devoted his life in the beginning to mastering all the yogas, to mastering all the meditations. He lived as an ascetic in the jungle with the other sadhus. He went through all this vigorous asceticism, and none of it worked. I mean, well, he said it taught him the powers of the mind, but it didn't teach him the nature, the essence of the mind, which led to freedom and liberation. And he was finally just disgusted. I mean, he'd exhausted all possibilities, and he went, okay, I'm done.
I quit.
I quit. And he sat down under this big ficus tree that grows in India that they call the Bodhi tree, but it's a kind of ficus. He just sat down under this nice shade tree and said, I quit. Over the next 9 days, he became fully enlightened, doing nothing. Which is...
doing nothing can be really hard.
Well, that's the hard thing. In meditation, I mean, there's a lot to do. We're not saying do nothing with your life. But to have that space in you where there's nothing to fix and nothing to do, where you can just come to rest in silence and vast inner peace and space, that's the heart of it. And so ever since, many of my Buddhist friends have been imitating the Master. If I sit in a full lotus and I put my hands in the cosmic mudra, just as the Buddha did, and with my eyelids at half-mast, and I look into nothing, and I do this just right, long enough, I'm going to get enlightened. Which is, I mean, the whole lesson I got from Buddha is, that doesn't work.
The other thing, too, that Michael said, you know, to enter the kingdom of heaven, well, first he said, the kingdom of heaven is right here, right now, right at hand. We just aren't seeing it. And then the flip side of that, you have to become like a child. Children don't do a bunch of spiritual exercises to be aware of, ooh, the sparkles on the tree, oh, the waves, oh, sand. You know, being caught up in our minds and our egos, we miss all of the beauty that is actually heaven all around us all the time. We're missing the smile of the person walking through the parking lot. We're missing a wave or a thank you of somebody, you know, that you let in, or waving back to somebody that let you in to get into another lane. We're missing all of those little moments because we're just so caught up in thinking. And when we slow that down and get into our hearts and really start to connect, then we can use our minds for constructive reasons, not to just keep us spinning in the past and the future.
So here's another waste of effort. many people still believe that the goal of meditation is to stop the mind, to silence the mind. It's the nature of the mind to never stop. It just is always coming up with new problems for you to fix, new ideas to capture your attention, glittery little things to go after. And you could spend the rest of your life in meditation trying to stop that when there's no need. There's a meditation practice called direct awakening, which I really like. But it's to notice, I think, the simplest way I could put it is the space between this thought and the next one that comes, or between this breath and the next breath. For just an instant between this thought and the next one, between this image in your mind and the next one, is nothing. There's a little space. And that little space is a door into vast, unbounded, unlimited awareness. And it's there all the time, but we're focused on the thoughts we want to stop, the images we like to hold on to or let go of, and the feelings, when if we would just take our attention off of the stuff floating through the mind and notice the space it's floating in. Focus awareness not on the stuff that's coming up. Focus awareness on the space it's coming up in and it's floating by in. And just let whatever comes up come up and pass away. There's nothing to repress. There's nothing to reject. There's nothing to fix. Just let it all unfold and keep returning to that space.
And that space is full of peace and unconditional love because it is the divine essence itself. And so when you start to abide in that space more, you start to get more of direct contact with wisdom and knowledge, because it's coming from a place that's higher than our minds and our egos. It's coming from source. So our lives actually get a lot easier, even though we think that thinking is going to make things easier. We've got to figure all this out and we got to take control. But the more that we go deeper into that heart space and the space in between everything is when the possibilities of miracles and of things just falling into place reside, because we'll be led to make this decision instead of the decision from our mind. We'll be led through the heart and the divine source itself.
Indeed.
Indeed.
And I just remembered to ask you to give us a like, a thumbs up or a heart if you're there on Facebook, because then we get to see who was with us and that you liked it. Or you love us and we love you. But we like to know, because there are more people here than the 2 likes that I'm seeing on this page. And I just love to know who the rest of you are, the 3. Anyway, that would just be nice. We do have another question here. Oh, and there's another thumbs up floating up. I love it. Yeah, and there's a heart.
Pop, pop, pop.
I love those. It sends little bubbles up on our screen.
Bubbles. Love bubbles.
Very cheery. So More asks, all the way from Colombia, can you talk about integrity? Can you talk about integrity? See, there are different ways to take integrity. If we're talking about the classical way of looking at integrity, it means that that my presentation, the way I'm presenting myself, is integral with my inner reality. It's sort of the opposite of hypocrisy, which is to have one mask on the outside and have other things going on the inside that contradict that. So integrity is when all these different elements of our being are coherent and consistent. So there's a lot of talk these days about integral spirituality, integral philosophy, integral meditation, integral enlightenment. So in the world of spiritual teachings these days, a lot of that has come through Ken Wilber and the Integral Institute. And basically, it's amazing how that's all unfolded. But Wilber saw how stunted some people's spirituality was, and that spiritual growth needs to embrace every level of our being, including our minds, including our bodies, including our relationships, and how we conduct our affairs. Wilber noticed, as I have been noticing, with some perplexity going back to the 1960s, that there were these really so-called enlightened teachers of various traditions. I could name the tradition, but Hindu masters, Buddhist masters, masters of other spiritual traditions, who were in very high states of consciousness. People would basically say they were enlightened. They were in a non-dual state of awareness. In other words, they'd come to a point where they were experiencing oneness with all that is. And they'd seen through and transcended the illusion of the separate self and the ego. And yet, they would, their lives were not integral with that. They had no morals. Some of these teachers back in the 60s and the 70s were sexually abusing their disciples and their students. Big no-no. This is not okay. And some of them, for instance, had these deep-seated ideas that women were inferior. And at certain times of the month, you could not go near a member of the opposite sex, or it would affect you spiritually. Well, that's all really not true, okay? Ideas I heard from this one enlightened master that he was Chinese. He didn't like Tibetans because Tibetans had sort of taken over China during the Mongol dynasty, and the Tibetan Lamas had displaced the Chan Buddhists and the Taoists from the imperial court, and Lamaism had taken over. Well, they're people with a long memory. And so to him, it's like, those Tibetans. And I'm going, wait a minute, that's not enlightened. So what Wilber saw is that spirituality needs to be integrated with every level of our being. We need to grow in morality, in aesthetics, in integrity on every level. So important. And we could say a lot more about it, but
Well, I think for me the essence of integrity is responding from the heart, because everybody's version of integrity is very, very different. For somebody, something that is their integrity is not necessarily somebody else's integrity. But when you're coming from the heart, it's all on a universal playing field. So like somebody may think that they have integrity because they won't watch this webcast. And other people may think that they don't have integrity because they won't watch the webcast, so, but when we come from the heart, we are making decisions from a universal level, which is based out of love and not charges and programming.
It's sort of back to the classical idea that the way we act, the way that we are manifesting through our lives is integral with our deepest truth.
Right.
And it's all coming from that place Suzanne's talking about.
Yeah. And when we don't feel like we're being in integrity with our beliefs in our heart, that's where, charges and programs get activated. So you can kind of censor yourself and see where you're not feeling integral, or you're not feeling like you're in alignment with your own heart's integrity. Usually it ends in bad feelings.
Yeah, but anyone that can read that stuff, I highly recommend Integral Spirituality by Ken Wilber, where he brings in science and mathematics and music and every area of human endeavor and weaves it into the whole spiritual journey of transformation.
It's
amazing.
too hard for me.
Well, okay, a simpler book is Integral Enlightenment, which basically has these four pivotal stages. Wake up. That's really easy to do. All we have to do is look past the identification with the mind and the body and with thoughts and begin to become aware of our own awareness. Awakening can be so quick these days. It may have taken Buddha all that time and all that suffering, but these days it's just easy to wake up. That's when the real work begins. Because after we wake up, we need to grow up. We're not in the fully mature, awakened, integrated state of the Christ or the Buddha, when we first, at least most of us, when we first awaken, we have to cultivate and nurture the seed of awakening and protect it and persevere and just know that it's flowering in its own speed, but we've got to grow up. And we can cooperate with that or we can not. And nobody needs.
It's just that simple.
And then after we've grown, we have awakened and we're growing up. The next level of this is cleaning up. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not okay to be an awakened being that has the morals of an alley cat. So after we wake up and we grow up, we discover the resources and the strength within ourselves to clean up, And you probably don't need to be told. But if you do, I think that Bodhi, the source, the presence will be glad to show you if you ask. Show me where I can clean up, okay? And then we work on ourselves and we do make constructive changes. And the fourth stage of integral awakening is show up. So we're not just awake and enjoying ourselves. We're awake and we've matured in awakening. We've cleaned up our act, and then we show up in the world, because the whole point of this is to shine the light. So.
But first we have to see the light.
Right. And it has to grow in us.
Yes.
And then we have to clean up all the stuff that's obscuring it.
Yeah.
And then it can really shine. and I mean, I had a friend, that said a few days to me, I don't know why I'm still here. And I said, you're here to shine. He said, you mean to spread the good stuff? And I went, yeah, exactly. I mean, simply put, a lot of us, especially if we're on the spiritual path, it's like, what is my life's purpose? If I only knew what I was being called to do, I would do it. Well, it's really simple. Shine. That's it. Love. Whatever presents itself, shine the light. Whatever light you've got, shine it.
And if all people did that, it doesn't matter what your job is or where you are or what your circumstances are, it's really, really difficult to be depressed when you're making someone else smile just by showing up and shining. It's very, very difficult to stay wrapped up on ourselves. A lot of times when people are down, they don't realize that, just smiling and being in gratitude can take you out of some really, really hard places in our life. Gratitude and smiling.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when I was a very young man, I took myself too seriously. I was like the young Buddha, I was very, but anyway.
And now you wear flowers on webcast.
Right. But sometimes I would get really just down on life and on myself. I was like 17, 18, and I was still going through my adolescent angst, But I had the good fortune to be a senior disciple of an awakened master. And I used to go to the temple several times a week, and this one night we called it healing night. People would come, and the students that were learning to work with energy, with chi, would use our skills to do healing work on people. I just felt so terrible. I didn't even want to be there, and I sure didn't want to interact with anybody. And my master took one look at me, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he wheeled me around, and he pointed to a person across the room that was sadder than I was, more disturbed than I was, suffering more than I was, and he kind of gave me a little shove, and he said, "Go help them." And the minute I did, the minute I got my attention off my own suffering on that other person, and because of the modality of energy work we were using, the minute I connected with their energy in a positive way of giving, I was free from that being turned in on myself and being depressed. I've never forgotten it. Sometimes I have forgotten to do it, but I've never forgotten that lesson of taking the attention off of oneself, especially if you're dwelling on it. Some people misunderstood the idea of dwelling, experiencing your charges, experiencing your programming, and they get locked in on it and just stare at it and be with it until it goes away, but it doesn't. Because what you got to do is look past. I mean, yes, we need to face our charges and accept whatever comes up, but we can't stop there. Not if we want to be free. We look past that for people around us and situations in our world that can use our service, that can use our presence. No matter how beat down or beat up or dark we may think we are, there are people all around us that we can just, well, like what we're doing lately, just make eye contact and smile. You know? Just that is just really changing the world around us. Try it, you'll like it. Well, I think that's it.
Okay, yeah. Wow. We got a lot of mileage out of integrity.
And that first question about, is spirituality really about spiritual practices and rituals and teachings and workshops, or isn't it about celebrating life and embracing the fullness,
Right.
Great. Yep. So, how about let's all close our eyes and center in our spiritual hearts and connect with the presence within. How do I do that? Well, just turn your attention to the heart of your being and invite the divine presence to embrace you, to flood you with grace, to fill you. You don't need to talk the presence into doing it, because that's all the presence wants to do, is love you, liberate you, embrace you, transform you, bless your life, and fill you with joy. So you don't need to talk the divine into it. There's no distance between you and this divine presence. Whether you can see it or feel it, it is the source of your existence. And it is pure unconditional love, which means the love that the presence has for you is without conditions, without strings attached. It's not holding you at a distance or keeping a veil or a wall between you and it until you become good enough or deserving enough or holy enough. Those were all wrong teachings. The truth is, there has never been any distance between you and the divine presence, because it is your true sacred self. It is your source. And it yearns to flood you with peace and grace and love and light. So simply receive the flowering heart blessing that is pouring out to you and within you. receive this flow of grace into the place that's hurting. Just allow it to fill and dissolve and release that pain in you. Just let it be and receive. Invite you with your eyes still closed to imagine we're sitting in a big blessing circle together. Lift up your hands with your palms open, facing forward, and invite the presence to pour the flowering heart blessing through you. To everyone participating in the Satsang, knowing that it's flowing back to you through all of them. If you're facing a huge problem, a challenge, release it to the presence and just put it in the center of the circle and leave it there. Katerina, that means your son. Now just relax. And whenever you're ready, you could open your eyes and begin to make direct eye contact with Suzanne and or me. Just keep looking at least one of our eyes. Just keep looking. As the light meditation begins, oceans of grace, unconditional love, and light pour through Suzanne and me out of every pore of our being, but especially through our eyes. The eyes have been called the doorways of the soul. And that divine light, if you just keep looking, making eye contact, will shine in through your eyes, into your spiritual heart, and cause the flames of divine love, awakening, and transformation to flower within you. keep meditating as long as you like. Or you could also lie down in Shavasana, which is find a place nearby to lay on your back with your eyes closed, your arms loosely at your sides with your palms open, turned upward, and just dissolve in gratitude and presence. We love you very much.
Much love, light, and blessings until we connect again.
Until then, the divine in us beholds the divine in you, and we bow